you all. Welcome back to Shay and the Good People podcast. I'm Shay of Shay and the Good People. It's in the title of the name. I'm Shayna Blass, and if you have not listened to the podcast before, this is the interview series pairing sister project to the Shay and the Good People show, live performance music show, singer-songwriter showcase that I host at Pete's Candy Store in Brooklyn. I'll sing original music, and then I have 3 different singer-songwriters on each show. So come see the show live. And then after you see the show, you can come back and listen to interviews. I have all the good people on the podcast. And we'll also, throughout the interview, you'll hear us cut in clips of our guests' actual performance at the show. Isn't this just a fucking brilliant idea? Wow. I'm really tired, but I'm really happy that you're listening. And today in the studio, one of our good people, I am interviewing one of my really good friends, brilliant musician. Please welcome to the pod, Jacob Fjeldheim.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, you were on the May 9th show of 2023.
Something like that.
That was this year that we're recording this year, and you were on the show. And that was the beginning of it all.
Sure.
I don't know what it all is yet, but when we listen back, we're like, wow, that was the day.
Uh-huh.
But we've known each other for a while because we started playing. Well, we got set up in a friendship, like music way, through our really good friend and brilliant performer, writer, songstress, Nick Blameyer.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out, Nick. I keep trying to get him to be on the show, but he has a kid.
Yeah.
A baby.
I hear that takes up a lot of your time.
A lot of time. But he's still working. He's still out there doing his thing. But he was like, a couple years ago, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, he was like, he told me, you should know someone. He's an MD musician. And we got connected and we had lunch at Grey Dog in Chelsea. Mm-hmm. And then we just like chatted and then hung out from there. Then I think the first thing, I needed a new MD for Basement Social for this show, this like larger show that I sometimes run or used to run a lot more when I lived up in Harlem. Was that the first thing we did together?
I think we played at Club Cumming once or twice before.
Okay.
Before I played with you on Basement Social. I feel for some reason compelled also to clarify that MD means music director and not a medical doctor.
Yeah, you're also my doctor.
I've had this confusion before.
Really?
In my life. Yeah.
Yeah, my friend Nick was like, I think you need a doctor, so you should meet my friend Jacob.
I know. I've got a great guy.
Yeah. I do need a lot of help in life, including a doctor. I actually was just talking to our mutual friend, Livy, who has been on the pod before and on the show. Go back and listen to episode 3.
Also a good person.
Great person. Mm-hmm. She's on episode 3 of Shay and the Good People. But I was hanging out with her this morning and we're just talking about health insurance, LOL. And I was like, I do need to go to the doctor for something. And procrastination. And I've just been procrastinating a lot.
Yeah.
Do you procrastinate? I feel like you don't.
I prefer not to answer that question.
You plead the fifth?
I plead the fifth. But
in my mind, you are someone that's has their shit together is too like broad of a word that people use. People have said that to me. They're like, I think you have your shit together. I'm like, I do things that I need to do. Like I get tasks done, but I wouldn't say I have my shit together. And procrastination comes up about larger things that I've been really wanting to do. And it's just all about fear, like about not wanting to be seen more.
In my limited experience with humankind, I find that the people who probably have their shit together don't. If you're thinking about whether you have your shit together, you probably don't.
If you think that about yourself, yeah.
So I think about that all the time, and I think that kind of answers your question. Yes, I procrastinate, but I found that it's a lot easier not to procrastinate on something that is there's no existential drain attached to it.
Damn,
so like creative projects, I'm procrastinating as much as I can.
There's existential dread.
Because there's existential dread attached at the end of it and at the beginning of it. And like the flow in the middle of it, maybe there's not as much existential dread, but it's there's always that block to get into it. Whereas just doing, I work a lot on music staffs, and, I do a lot of kind of what I think of as nuts and bolts kind of music work that I have no trouble not procrastinating on, because it's occupying my time in a way that's not, like I said, existentially draining.
And it's not really coming from you. Like, it's a task. It's a like boss employee relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more of an expectation, and maybe, or like the boundaries are more clear about like what needs to get done, when it needs to get done, and what it's supposed to look like. Whereas like if we're sitting down and writing a song or booking our own shows, or for me, I'm procrastinating a lot about getting a really good EPK together and pitching myself to managers because I need help. But that is taking me very long.
I think part of it too is that I've never been really a comfortable anyone watching this, I think, can see from just how I exist as a human, but I'm not like a center of attention kind of person for the most part. So I also like I find it a lot easier not to procrastinate on something where there's a client service relationship. When I'm working, not necessarily a boss employee relationship, but something where I have I'll get the social gratification that I crave from the day to day, working with someone who I can support, but I don't have to be the center of the narrative in that case. I'm a satellite. I like to be the center in some contexts, but I also find it when I spend a lot of my working hours, or like my waking hours, which are the same thing. When I
no, not waking and working are the same thing.
That's
brutal.
But I find that I have a lot more energy at the end of a day if that's how I spend the bulk of my time.
Really?
Just because, it's tough to be, when you're creative, you're kind of always in the limelight. And so when you're a non-creative satellite role, you can spend a lot of time letting your mind, letting part of your mind wander.
Okay, so do you want to be my manager then?
Yeah, sure. You have your people call my people.
Maybe I think I have the opposite problem. Not from an egotistic standpoint. I think more from like a bossy Jewish woman standpoint. Sure. Of like, I get sometimes pretty, like I've had a 9-to-5 before. I've had a full-time remote job. I worked in retail. I've worked in restaurants. And if I'm working for other people on their projects all the time in like a 12-hour stretch, I get really irritated and exhausted. If I don't make pockets for myself where I can be some kind of creative, and that doesn't, most of the time I'm not making money from it. Most of the time people don't even see it. It's just like, if I need to be creative in my own way, which means writing, which means journaling, which means playing guitar. Like, if I'm being a satellite too much, I get very depleted.
Interesting.
And that sounds egotistical, because it's like, if I'm not at the center of attention, which, I mean, let's be honest, I do love that.
Right.
But
we're here.
Everyone should, my name's in the title.
Right.
But it's also not like it's like 1/3 trauma, needing attention, and like that's how I got noticed at home, because and I was like very competitive in a lot of like the sports and the dance and the stuff that I did. And like, if my parents spent a lot of time like we were like always going to do something that had to do with like I don't know, I felt like that's when I got like lots of car rides going to dance practice, or going to soccer, or going to taking me to rehearsal. So it's like, okay, if I'm doing something and I get to express myself in that way, I don't know if that's like too convoluted, but
no, we're taking it all the way back,
of course. But that's where it all comes from.
Yeah, sure.
And then like number 2, I talked about this. My sister and I talked about this when we had an interview for the pod, of like the infinity loop. I really like that. I like giving my energy to an audience, or to sharing my gift, whatever. If it's like leading a bunch of people or producing a show or something, like I like giving my energy there, because I feel like it comes back and it just kind of flows in that way. And then I said 1/3, 1/3, and then the last third that I'm not quite sure about.
It's a mystery. It's a question mark.
It's a question mark. And also I think just like maybe a little bit of addiction to validation.
What I'm hearing is that you're extroverted.
I am. Yeah. I've always known that about myself, extroverted, but I am trying to get better at noticing like at what cost, like stacking my day in front of a lot of people because I am like avoiding alone time.
Yeah.
I like alone time on my time, not like the pandemic was hard for me. Was 2020 isolation hard, and hard for a lot of people in a lot of ways, but a lot of people really liked it. Like my mom's mental health was like she was like thriving in 2020.
Right.
And I've actually heard a lot of people who have borderline, like they benefited a lot from that, from the isolation. There was just like less of a chance of being abandoned, I think. And I think I was the opposite. In
a city, it definitely really stabilized your relationships from day to day. Having the pods, I think, it simultaneously shrunk our communities, but also crystallized them in a way.
Yeah.
Where you kind of had like a clear social contract. These are the 5 to 10 people I'm going to see this year in person. And that became, I think that did simplify it for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And my pod was like my aunt and uncle in Bowie, Maryland. So I took myself out of the city, which was bad.
We love.
Yes, we do love. Yeah, my aunt and uncle, because we did a show at Jacob helped me write music for this Hanukkah hour show that I would like to go back to.
Streaming somewhere in the 2019 annals of the Kennedy Center Facebook page.
I know.
If you want to dig.
It's also on YouTube.
It's also on YouTube.
If you want. I want us to redo it. It was really great what we pulled together. I think we did that in like Kennedy Center called me or emailed me and was like, so randomly in 2019, like, hey, can you do a Hanukkah show? Like, the Kennedy Center didn't know any other Jews to write 1 hour. Like, I was so honored, but shocked that they knew my emailed me. I guess Barbara Streisand was unavailable, but like, it was so random. Again, very grateful, but I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I think we put that together in like a month or something.
This was just another case of bad timing and porcelain walls with a poison lid lining. I'd ponder alternate worlds, but why bother? Love to the homesicks like death to the martyr. Isn't it ghost to build your house with rose-colored glass and hurricane shutters? Dig you a mold to keep the kingdom out of friends and their weapons, kind words, sparks, and cutters.
And also, okay, so the pods also is like, my anxiously attached brethren, like having, I'm sure knowing, or I can imagine having a smaller group of like, these are my people, I know I can count on them, is helpful socially.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to maintain social connections at all in New York. It's really hard to maintain social connections in showbiz, especially when my feet are in so many different rooms for the most part that it's felt for a long time. Yeah, literally. It's felt like for a long time I've had the people that I hang out with are the people that I'm working with, which to a degree is true. But it's been something that I'm kind of leaning into a shift in mindset now of sort of I think of it like this. Don't laugh at it, but I think of it like giving up a little bit in the context of the practice of creativity for me.
Mm-hmm.
Setting aside what I was talking about before with the the day-to-day, the music staff stuff.
Yeah.
Not untethering my creative brain from feeling as though I need to be building a career from that. Because then I'm locked into this capitalism feedback loop, and I'm not. It's just stymied me from doing anything, from playing, from writing. It's really been like kind of a mental hurdle.
That's like your biggest creative block?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it's just that there's like an existential question that's like, is this good enough? Do I feel seen? But attached to that is this time that I'm investing going to pay? Is this time that's going to serve me financially? Like, is this a good investment there's like a cost benefit analysis somewhere in my brain.
I'm only laughing because I don't think about that question almost ever. And AKA why I'm like, I'm like, let's just keep going and do it bigger and just like throw more money at it.
Right.
And yeah, so it's
well, that's what I want to carry into it. So I've actually found that sometime in the last few months, I started describing, I was like talking, not to talk about dating, which I say with an asterisk over the
Let's get into it, sweetie.
But in those contexts, it's like, you'll talk to someone and you're like, what are your hobbies? And I'm like, I want to like start collecting trains or something just so I have the ability to say these are my hobbies, until I realized one day that what I do in my spare time that's not connected to my income is write and play music.
100%.
I spend a lot of my time doing that, and I've been trying to bake that into my schedule in a way that's like structured free time. So I'm thinking of it as a hobby, not to like downplay the significance of it to me emotionally, but I think of it, I've begun thinking of it as a hobby because it frees me from feeling like I have to do anything with it.
Yeah.
Because it feels good to make stuff, and that's where I'm trying to get back to my roots and feel good making stuff,
And just like to feel good.
Just to feel good.
That's rare.
Quality of life.
Sometimes rare for me. Yeah.
It's good. Quality of life is good for quality of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And New York is, I think I was listening to a podcast with Whitney Cummings on, and she doesn't want to live in New York. She's like, the stuff that should be easy is hard in New York. And I think we have to reframe a lot of these things. Like getting groceries should be easy and is easy in most cities when you can just put it in your car. You can take the cart, take the cart to your trunk, put it in your trunk, the groceries in your trunk, and then you can just throw or like roll the cart wherever you want in the parking lot, and then you can go home. And we don't have that. Most of us don't have that. So going back to even like the hobby of like structured time and also discipline and also time in general, because we have to take the train. So being able to know, I mean, I think that's huge. One that you're making more space for, because your music is amazing.
Thank
and
you.
I was listening to your set, your Shay The Good People set. What I don't want, what I don't want, what I want, what I don't want. It's so good. And I think both of us could probably this is why I think in general, people have friends that they have to like learn from each other and see mirrors of like, I could probably use a little bit more of the like financial aspect of it in terms of just like having a spending plan for like making a podcast and like having a spending plan for like how many band gigs do I want a month or something like that. I just am like, I don't know. I'll just do it and I'll like work extra and then I'll just like throw all this money at it and like we'll see what works.
Yeah.
And I don't think about monetizing it, but I would. That's a good reminder for me of like, I think because I'm not sure if I've ever given myself the like the realization or the confidence that like this can be my full-time gig. Like I can actually be successful artist and that can look very different. It's not going to look like Lady Gaga, but you can be a successful artist and tour and talk to people all over the world by having a podcast or putting out music that people get to listen to. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the fuck it is, but like...
Yeah. I think that one of the difficulties is redefining our success from being... We define success from the top down rather than thinking of success as like, you know, not to be Norwegian about it, but like thinking about just like living on a river somewhere and having everything you need and never having to worry about like just taking care of yourself as a human rather than taking care of yourself as someone who's trying to be organized into a ladder of success in global like artistic society.
The scale's too big.
The scale is too big. And I also think part of because to kind of go back to what I was saying before about the whole like capitalism machine creeping into like being the roadblock for me, a lot of that is not, I don't do a cost benefit analysis in terms of the numbers because that's always been kind of secondary to how I think about that when I'm in that headspace. But I think a lot about my brain is thinking about the social capital of it and thinking about
what way?
Well, like
respect.
Well, like on one extreme, it's like write good music, find love, you know, like that's an aspect of it. But it's also just like you get the social reward for performing and thinking. I think where I get trapped is I start having capitalism brain thinking about that, where you're like, it's not just, you know, if I play maybe 1 or 2 shows a year for the last 2 years. Like I used to perform a lot more, but for the last year and a half or so, it's really every 4 to 6 months that I get out and really do a dedicated singer-songwriter set. Mm-hmm. And it's like the same 30 faces for the most part. People will shift around, but it's like, it's kind of just putting on a show for your friends, which is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Mm. And then part of the little like weevil that lives inside my brain that has, you know, drank the capitalism Kool-Aid is like, those 30 people, you're not expanding your audience. And it's like, there's something to...
Oh, totally. All the time.
I centralized the idea of expanding my audience more primarily sometimes than the actual making of the art. And that's why I do neither of them. That's the procrastination of the whole thing.
Yeah. And the irony of like, how are you going to grow your audience if you don't even put yourself out there? Yeah.
And so then it's like, you know, I don't write songs for a long period of time, which is why I started any of it in the first place, is because that's something that I've loved doing since I was a kid. So I just kind of, I'm trying to get back in touch with that.
Yeah.
You know.
And how did you start in music? I don't know if I know that. I mean, we've known each other for a while, but I don't know how you started writing or playing. Which came first?
I kind of started, well, I was always a person who, my older sister, I have a number of them, but my my youngest older sister was taking piano lessons, and I started taking cello lessons when they, in the 4th grade, I think, when they started a string orchestra in our stupid little elementary school, Tropical Elementary.
You played cello? Yeah. In 4th grade?
In 4th grade. It's my first instrument.
Oh my God. Were you so little with like this huge cello?
I had a 3/4 cello. It was, you know, it was pretty cute.
Oh, I want a picture of that.
I'm sure there's a picture somewhere. We'll have to we'll intersplice it.
Like
it'll be right here in the video.
Yeah.
What was I saying? So shortly after, but I kind of really liked learning by ear, and I thought of the period of my life up to that point as being kind of non-musical, which is not true. There was always music around, but I kind of looked at musicians. You know, I had people in my classes that played guitar or something, and I was like, wow, these musicians are kind of... I did not identify with that crowd at all.
Mm-hmm. The other 4th and 5th graders.
The other 4th and 5th graders. Yeah. At that point, it would have been like 2nd and 3rd graders. That were, you know, I was just
these
like, these
other
guys
musicians.
Just, you know, they're too cool for me. But I started kind of teaching myself piano by ear around then, which I've always had good ears in that aspect. Hence what I do for a living now. But I was, my my parents basically like kicked my ass a little bit, and they were like, you know, you're not really learning music, just playing it by ear. And so I started taking lessons and all that. So it had always kind of been.
That's when the bullying started.
That's when the bullying started before that.
Oh, okay, good.
I wear glasses, but but yeah, that kind of, it was always a hobby throughout it was like a central to my life hobby. It was what I spent all of my time thinking about and doing. But it was never, you know, I was like, I should be a surgeon, which I came nowhere close to being a surgeon. But, you know.
Wait, you thought that as a kid?
Yeah, I was pre-med when I first went to college.
Really?
Briefly.
I
hated
boring.
chemistry. But when I was in, basically, I had a physics teacher when I was like avoiding STEM at all costs. When I really wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a speechwriter for a long time when I was in high school. And I got away with 1 year where I had no science classes, and I was thrilled. And then one of the physics teachers from the school came in and slammed his hands down on my desk and said, I noticed that you have home economics 7th period. And I said, that's right. And he said, I have a physics class 7th period. I'm transferring you into my physics class. And I said,
ew.
Okay, fine. And so by the end of it, I ended up getting a degree in physics. So that was,
wait.
So that's what I was ending up. I had been like I felt kind of chosen to move into the STEM field. Because I'm good at math, and I'm good at physics. And
do you agree with the saying, like, yeah, if you know theory, if you're really good at theory, music theory, like that's essentially math. Like you must be really good at math.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar. Yes and no. I mean, that's the kind of comparison that's always. It's like I had a really tall friend, and he was like, every single person would be like, "Wow, you're tall. You play basketball?" And so
as
it's
you're
like
wearing a basketball shirt.
Everyone finds out that people will say either of two things. And I prefer one of them over the other, obviously. Yeah. One of the two things is, you know that they say music and math are one and the same. And I go, oh, I didn't realize that. Thank you for telling me.
Wow. I never heard that before.
And the other one is, Sondheim studied math in school. I'm like, that I'll take that one. You know,
I do like
which
that.
I'm not.
I like that.
I think that's true, but I've never looked it up. So if
we'll never know.
When we do like an email segment on this podcast, we get like a
question and
listener
answers.
Email. Yeah,
not yet. We need more people tuning in. But hey, if that's what you want, write to the podcast.
Shay and the Good People at listenermail.com. Or switch
or just
those around.
DM us on Instagram at Shay
we'll
and
have
the
a
Good
QR
People.
code at the next show.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Basically, I was really gung-ho. I was kind of getting burnt out from academics, which is kind of where I wanted to go. And then one of my good friends, Chris Pratt, not the actor, but but a beloved friend from
Florida,
I'd known for a long time, and who I had gone to math school with too. One day, I was just kind of like bemoaning the situation, and he said, you're spending as much time doing this, like doing homework and studies in general, as you're spending. I was out music directing at Gainesville Community Playhouse in Gainesville, Florida. Is where I was playing for ballet classes at the university. I was just spending as much time doing. I was writing a show, and so he was like, maybe that's just what. Maybe if you're spending as much of your time with having no reason other than internal motivation to do that, maybe that's a better use of your entire life. And so I said, yeah, you're right. And so this is what I do now.
Just one friend's suggestion just sent you to a full pivot.
A very wise friend. It wasn't, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was...
Oh, wise
I think
friend.
I needed that little kick, I think, but that's kind of how I ended up doing music.
Once upon a time, you could find me in the back of a bar on Delancey. You just have to ask for that sad long-haired kid. I'd sit quiet and crumple my napkin and stare at the wall until nothing would happen. I love feeling small and alone, and so I hid. Some kids are born with a good mind and money. Some kids are smart and some kids are funny. Some kids prefer to be happy. I envy those. I've always rather I run with my troubles, drink whatever's cold and drown in the bubbles, prop up my stupid head with my tired elbows.
You learn something new about your friends every day. That's why we have the pod.
That's why we have the pod.
Okay, Fierce. So now you're here,
So
and
now
now
I'm
you're
here.
kind of doing like another like mini pivot of like, you know what, I want to spend more time doing my own music.
I like to think of my life as a constant pivoting of
Pivot, step, walk,
pivot, step, walk.
We're all pivoting all the time, but I think if you're an artist, maybe anywhere, but especially in New York, you have to be able to pivot very quickly.
Yeah.
Because everything can just be taken away
Yeah.
with one virus.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? I mean, that changed everything. Okay, I want to ask you about
Which virus are you referring to?
all of them.
Okay.
So you're dating in the city and you're working. I don't even know when you have time for that because you're a very busy person.
I have very little time for that.
Yeah. I haven't had the energy to do that this summer, but I'm more open to it this fall. But do you have, what are your thoughts on like dating musicians and artists? Because I kind of go back and forth with it.
I've had the majority of people that I've dated have been musicians and artists in some form.
Same.
And it went really well for brief periods of time.
Yeah. But it's always in terms of like you're sitting down with someone on a date and they're like, what are your hobbies? Like having that question from someone who is not doing like our passion or our focus in what we love is also what we're trying to do for our job.
Yeah.
And that's not the majority of the world. And like even just that slight difference is like, oh, how to move forward thinking about being in a relationship with someone in long term of like, I want to make sure that I'm with someone who is okay with a lot of the sacrifice that I have to make. That's not the norm. And with an artist or another musician or even like an actor or an artist, not in the same way, but who is like out there publicly, like already kind of gets that. And maybe there isn't that kind of, there won't be that tension or that conversation, but I don't know. I don't, maybe that's classically too much overthinking.
No, I mean, listen, I don't know unless we can think of a mutual person we know. I don't know like two musicians who are not. I think it asks of at least one person in that relationship to be a point of stability. I think without a point of stability, the instability begins to pull the relationship apart over time.
Yeah.
Like a centrifuge, you know, it's just like eventually it wobbles out and it just, you know, that's kind of like a quick dismissive way of describing the whole thing, but it seems to hold true.
Yeah. And stability to me has two options. It's like emotional stability or financial stability. Ideally, you want both, but I think if both people have a little bit of financial instability, like the emotional stability of at least one person needs to be there.
Yeah, I mean, with the exception of like trust fund babies, there's like emotional stability and financial stability, I think, are often probably highly correlated.
Yeah.
You know, so that also becomes one of those complicated things where because here's the thing, if you're an emotionally stable person, let me walk that back. If you're an emotionally unstable person, that also probably correlates highly with being a passionate person, which I think is also important in, like, that's part of the symbiosis of a relationship.
If you're
like
emotionally unstable, you're a passionate person.
Well, I think that there are, I know that there are people in the world who are less, and I become this person from time to time, and usually I'm the more, shall we say, passionate, but like, I think there are people who they have their life together, but maybe they're unaware of the excitement of the life of an artist who does not have their shit together, and I think that can actually be a positive. That can be something that you bring into an environment, not you, but the artist.
Yes. I know you're not talking directly to me.
I'm not talking
even if
directly
it feels
to
like
me,
it.
even though to you, even though I am. Yeah, I think that's meaningful. That's a meaningful positive that someone who is passionate brings into that situation. But passion is correlated with emotional instability, because that's kind of one of the, it's like if you're a person who is more emotionally neutral for the most part, your highs and your lows are more managed. I don't know.
So like sex is bad?
No, I don't mean sexual chemistry, because I think that's a completely different.
It's a different scale. Drawer, closet.
But it's exciting to date a person who's artistic, because there may be a lot of emotional lows, but there are also a lot of emotional highs.
Hey, there's going to be a lot of emotional lows, which I think people don't get who are not artists, who are dating artists. They're like, wait a minute, you were fun, and no, wait, now you're sad. What's happening? I feel scared.
Yeah. Well, I
think that should be on the cover of the book too.
Yeah. I mean, I've always I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't make it sound like I like being with someone that has the lows, but like there is like a caretaker in me that does feel fulfilled by filling the role of a person who can like be there for someone experiencing emotional lows. So that's not something that I think of as a negative, but I think it can also, again, when it's two people that have that, then the instability can start to wear down the sides of the ship.
Yeah. And there's a balance between like being someone's therapist in the relationship and having your own well of empathy and feeling good. Again, like having that kind of like social contract or validation from another person of like, oh, I know my value because when they're suffering, I can fix that. Mm-hmm. And so I know I'm valuable, and I have to be careful to like not get sucked into that too much too. Cause then at some point they're not going to need you, or that's just going to be like a codependent downward spiral. Ever heard of that?
No. Codependency.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It's a confusing and complicated thing, but I think it's just that's as far we've gotten as far into the answer as I have, for myself.
No answer. I think just like I feel like I was just also rambling about it, maybe just because things that I'm thinking about, and maybe a little bit like I think a block for me, like putting myself out there more creatively, but even more like relationally, is like I don't have enough experience, or I haven't like not fixed, but it's like I don't know how to identify some of the scary things that could happen, or scary conversations, or scary dynamics that could happen, or it's a little bit easier career wise.
To invest,
it's a control issue. Yeah, ultimately.
Well, I mean, so here's a little parable. I had there was when I was matriculating into physics school.
I don't know how to spell
get a good
that.
SAT word in there.
Yeah.
When I was going to physics school, I was one of my classmates' parents gave me the advice, because he had also gone to physics school, so we'd kind of talked. He was a practicing physicist, I should say. He had a PhD in working laboratory. But he said, when I was in undergrad, one of my favorite things to do was do the dishes. I said, what? And he said, because there were so many days where I would be mired in some difficult study, and I would go and I would just start washing dishes. And I'm like, that's right, I can accomplish something. So I think that it's similar I feel a similar way towards, I guess romantically, but also in terms of my creation right now. It's like the things that I'm able to put one foot in front of another and accomplish on a regular daily scale, those are kind of self-reinforcing. So that's where I've been spending a lot of my energy too, and why I've been focusing on self-improvement in the same way, because I see those results for myself, and I know that's ultimately going to make me a stronger romantic partner anyway. So I'm kind of
absolutely.
So it's because that I have in where we hit a wall in this conversation in terms of the answering of the unknowable questions of love. I hit that wall myself, and I'm like, it's good now. It's a time to sidestep and look at things that are to answer some questions,
Yeah.
Even if they're not directly related to that big, important one.
Yeah, totally.
Freeze time in your headlights, your sweet lines like a lead kite. Once your sweet place in the worst way. What's your first say in your worst day? Say you take it back, I take the flak, just hold my hand. I wanna stay drunk on the salts of your protection till I can't stand. That's exactly what I don't want.
I mean, two things. One, very good to just have a task that you can complete so that our like caveman brain can be like, I can do things. And I'm like, I wouldn't say I'm a workaholic, but I am a projectaholic for sure. Like I start a million different things, and I sometimes often don't complete them or just start new projects so that I feel overwhelmed and stressed out. And that's how I give myself validation, because I'm like, oh, I have so much going on. I'm so busy and like I have my shit together, but I don't. Which was like a huge challenge with this podcast too, which I'm glad I'm still doing it. And it's like all on me to kind of start and finish whenever, but it's so it is really great to have those like small little things that's like, oh, here's the start time of it. And then when I'm finished, I can literally see the rack of like wet, clean plates. And that feels good. And that like there's some kind of dopamine in that. And then two, which just to reflect like you working on yourself, which you really have been. I mean, we're sending quotes of the attached book back and forth, which I highly recommend.
Yeah.
And somebody told me, I was like bitching about like my career, like what level, quote unquote, I'm in, when somebody said like the phase one is like the longest phase. But this particular person I was talking to about what I want in my career and what I want more of in my life. And she was like, well, if you want the tree to grow larger, the roots have to be bigger and the roots have to go deeper. So if you want more in your life, or you want better, if you want even a better apartment, or if you want a better partner, if you want better for your career, you actually have to go in and go a little bit deeper each time of like, why, what do I believe about myself?
Mhm.
Why do I think I don't have that? What judgments am I spewing or am I thinking? What judgments am I looping about or negativity am I just looking a little bit deeper each time? You don't have to go to the root of everything, even though I love to go deep, 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 dark into the trauma, honey.
Uh-huh.
That tree will grow, slightly bigger every time.
Yeah, it takes a long. It's one of the things that I've enjoyed. I'm horrible at owning plants, but I have a couple, the basic ones. And there's something that's really rewarding about one being forced to stay on a schedule, not in the way that an animal is going to yell at you if you're not feeding it, but just, you have to keep you're kind of self-regulating by maintaining these creatures, plants. But also you see the reward.
Yeah.
But you don't see it immediately.
Right.
It's a continual reinforcement of the habit process that feels good,
Yeah. And you can't see the roots either.
And you can't see the roots.
They're in the soil, honey.
In the soil. You need good roots, you need good soil.
True.
You need sunlight. These are all
hard to get in New York.
These all work in the metaphor.
Yeah, they do. Okay, last thing I want to ask you about is that song that I mentioned a little bit earlier. That was the third song that you did in this Shay and the Good People set.
Correct.
What's the song called?
It's currently called Laundry Pile, but if
cool.
If any listener mail comes in that has a better title before now and the eventual release of that song, which I'm now teasing officially.
Oh, really?
Feel free to, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
I'm not famous enough to have to worry about a secret drop. So.
How do you create your own fame? But also, can you tell me about that song?
Sure.
Where you wrote it, how you wrote it. It's like, you guys will hear a little clip of it, but I just want to know more about it because I love it.
It's funny. It's one of those songs that is a little bit of a free association word jumble, but also meaningful. It's one of those songs that I wrote not really like feeling this like an emotional energy that had its own language that I started writing. It was kind of like speaking to the relationship that I was in. I wrote it in 2021, I want to say, maybe 2020, but it was quarantine times.
Whoa.
I think it was pre-vaccine quarantine time. So it's just, the way that you can kind of see that in the intimacy of the song a little bit. It feels of a room. And I remember the room that I was in when I wrote it, which is a great room. And it's just one of the choruses, the way the chorus goes is what I don't, that it describes a relationship that's not really working. At the time, it kind of clarifies itself over time what the image is pointing to, but it's kind of related to a couple of different situations I've been in, even since writing the song. So it's not necessarily about a relationship that you're in. It may be the ghost of one that you're trying to release. But really it's something that's not some delicious thing that's not working. And it's what you don't, it's what I don't want, right? It's what I don't want, 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 what I want, what I don't want. And it's just like, it's pushing on you and you push back, but it's no matter how long it pushes on you, it continues to orbit you. That's what it is about. Other than that, it's really just a bunch of nonsense.
Oh, okay, cool.
True nonsense.
You kids can write a really good song about nonsense too, if you want. Well, it's one of my faves, and I'm excited for it to be out in the world.
One of these days.
Oh, this was truly not enough time to talk, and also we're both really busy that we don't even really get to hang out that much. But we're coming to the end of our time here, and I'm just super grateful that you came and answered all my silly little questions on the pod, Jacob.
Thanks for making me the center of attention for this brief moment.
You're
I have
welcome.
to go retreat and recharge my social battery for 2.5 months.
No, not that long. Thank you for allowing me to be a satellite for like 5 minutes.
Oh, great.
A little bit of the podcast.
There's
Not
a
the
lot
whole
of mixed
time.
metaphor on this episode.
Yeah, but they'll get it. The true fans get it. Well, thanks for coming on, and tell the people at home where they can find you on the intranet.
You can find me at on Instagram and other social media sites at The Fjeld. That's THEFJELD. You can find me anywhere where there is Spotify and or other streaming services, et cetera, et cetera.
What's your album called again?
I have an EP that was released in 2021 called Local Call.
Local
which is
Call.
Streaming everywhere.
Ring, ring. Calls coming from inside the house.
Calls coming from inside the house. And more soon.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Jacob, for coming in.
Thank you, Shay.
And thank you guys for listening. Follow us on Instagram at Shay and the Good People. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Exactly what I don't want, 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 I don't want, what I don't want, what I don't want, what I want, what I don't want, what I want, what I don't 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 want, what I want, what I don't want, what I want, what I don't 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 want, what I want, what I don't want, what I want, what I don't 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 want, what I want. Thank you.